Welcome to Hydrogen Rising, a bi-weekly podcast created and hosted by the global law firm K&L Gates that brings you analysis of critical, cutting-edge issues impacting the global hydrogen market. We look forward to your engagement and feedback. And of course, don't hesitate to reach out if you have ideas about new topics you'd like us to cover.
Greetings, Hydrogen Rising listeners. I'm David Walkner, a partner in the Washington, D.C. office of the global law firm K&L Gates and co-leader of the firm's global hydrogen practice. As usual, I am joined today by my co-host, Sandy Safro, the Associate General Counsel for Energy and Technology Regulation at the Edison Electric Institute here in Washington, D.C. Hey, Sandy, how are things going for you over at EEI with your new gig?
Hey, David, I'm doing well. Things are going well. I'm definitely starting to get my feet wet a little bit more and dive in some more on some of the clean technology and carbon-free technology issues that a number of EEI members are interested in taking a look at and already have initiatives underway for a number of them. So it's great to be here with you today. It's great to be sharing the mic with you again, and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, and I expect that you all are quite busy with all of the exciting developments in Washington, D.C. right now on Capitol Hill and in the Biden administration related to energy and energy markets.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. Well, I'm glad to hear things are going so well, Sandy. So today we have a real treat for our Hydrogen Rising listeners. This episode will publish on Friday, October 8th. That's 10:08. For those of you in the know on hydrogen, that is National Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Day here in the United States. And in honor of that, we are thrilled to have a very special guest and to welcome to Hydrogen Rising someone who probably needs no introduction and is honestly a bit of a legend in the hydrogen world. Dr. Sunita Satyapal, Director of the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technologies Office at the U.S. Department of Energy. Dr. Satyapal, in her capacity as Director of the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technologies Office, is responsible for the overall strategy and execution of hydrogen and fuel cell activities, including oversight and coordination of about $150 million per year of research and development programs. She has had a career in the sector. Prior positions, including at DOE, include Chief Engineer, Deputy Program Manager, and the Hydrogen Storage Team Leader. Prior to joining DOE in 2003, she managed R&D as well as business development at United Technologies Research Center and at UTC Fuel Cells in Connecticut. She received her PhD in physical chemistry from Columbia University and did her postdoc work in applied and engineering physics at Cornell. Dr. Satyapal has numerous publications, including in Scientific American, has 10 patents issued, and a number of recognitions, including a Presidential Rank Award. As our listeners are aware, there are tremendous efforts underway in the United States to build out the hydrogen economy, and the Department of Energy's Office of Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technologies has played and will continue to play a leading role. And I think especially if Congress passes the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, which would create substantial opportunities for growth of hydrogen and the hydrogen economy in the U.S. So with that, let's dive right in. Dr. Satyapal, welcome to Hydrogen Rising.
Thank you, David.
So we're obviously cognizant that your time is limited and in high demand. So let me just kind of start out right off the bat here on the evolution of DOE and the Hydrogen and Fuel Cells Technology Office that you're the director of. And I think importantly, so that we can level set for our listeners, what are you and your team in the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technologies Office working on? What are you focused on right now?
Great. Well, thanks for the question. And I have to say that we really have a three-pronged approach. So the first is we really have to get the cost down of various technologies, hydrogen production, delivery, storage, end-use applications. And so R&D is a really high priority, again, across that value chain. And then the second is we help to enable first-of-a-kind demonstrations and deployments. So in that role, we help to de-risk technologies, focus on systems integration, for instance, integrating electrolyzers, complete systems, with renewables and even with nuclear. And so that's the second, the three-pronged approach. And then the third I usually talk about is enabling activities. So that's where we look at how do we enable safety codes and standards, harmonized codes and standards, for instance, globally. How do we ensure a consistent analytical methodology? For instance, as we look at emissions, life cycle emissions and so forth, and workforce development, that's also an important priority, STEM, diversity, equity, inclusion. So those are the addressing our environmental justice activities. Those are the what I call enabling activities. So how do we raise the tide so all the ships go up? And then in addition, I would say that even though I'm speaking from the perspective of the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technologies Office, which covers hydrogen and fuel cells in multiple applications, such as heavy-duty trucks and other hard-to-decarbonize sectors, industrial applications, energy storage, and so forth. I'm also speaking with my hat on as DOE Hydrogen Program Coordinator, and I do want to emphasize that there, in addition to the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Technologies Office, our sister offices, Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, Nuclear Energy, Basic Science through the Office of Science, ARPA-E, and others also are coordinating on hydrogen and fuel cell technology. So, for instance, the fossil resources plus CCS under a fossil energy office also includes hydrogen activities. But in general, I would say that three-pronged approach, so R&D, how do we reduce cost, improve performance, durability, the second in terms of the demonstrations, enabling deployments, de-risking, and then the third, that enabling activities to help foster and accelerate progress. Those are really the main key areas.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sunita. I guess just, as our listeners are, I expect, familiar with or will have heard about DOE's Energy Earthshot initiatives, and the first Earthshot that was announced was the Hydrogen Earthshot Initiative, which is really exciting, I think, particularly for our podcast and for our listeners and for those who are interested in the hydrogen space. We have listeners for Hydrogen Rising who are all over the world. I think at the last count, our listeners were in over 30 countries. Can you take a couple of minutes and just explain a little bit about the Hydrogen Earthshot Initiative and what its objectives are?
Sure. Thanks so much for asking. And in fact, when we had our Hydrogen Shot Summit just exactly a month ago, we also had over 33 countries and almost 5,000, I think, registered over the 2 days and over 3,000 for the plenary. So it was great. And so the Hydrogen Shot is the first of a series of energy earth shots that will be released by the administration, the Department of Energy. And it's really an all hands on deck approach, a call for innovation, collaboration, and how do we accelerate our clean energy economy and tackle the toughest remaining barriers to quickly deploy and address the clean energy technologies at scale. And so it uses the Sunshot model that was developed a decade ago, and it sets really tough but achievable targets to help transform technologies over about a decade time frame. And so the purpose, again, is how do we lower costs, improve performance, create jobs, and really enable our clean energy goals. And so Hydrogen Shot has a bold, ambitious, easily articulated target of 111, which stands for $1 for 1 kilogram of clean hydrogen in 1 decade. And there will be on the order of about 6 to 8 energy earth shots, as was announced previously. And again, these will look for, how do we bring together a concerted and cohesive effort to address these challenges. And so the intent is to bring together the entire community, so universities, industry, other agencies, even international leaders and experts, labs and institutes to look at how can we actually meet that goal? And so it's looking at clean hydrogen. So we have, again, cast a wide net. So electrolysis as well as thermal conversion, for instance, examples like pyrolysis. There could be other waste or biomass plus fossil gasification, and of course with CCS, and then advanced pathways as well, such as even biological approaches, photoelectrochemical or thermochemical approaches, high temperature thermochemical approaches, any approach that can meet within a decade that $1 and get to scale. And the only other thing I'll mention, though, so even though we're focusing with hydrogen shots on production, that first step to get low-cost hydrogen, it also includes looking at scale. So obviously, getting to that $1 implies that we would be at scale. Today, we produce a little over 10 million metric tons of hydrogen in the U.S. That is almost a seventh of the global supply. But we see scenarios where, depending on different off-takers and demand and price points, that we could get 2 to even 5 times more hydrogen production. So we'll also be looking at all the other aspects of enabling hydrogen at scale, which includes infrastructure and large-scale storage and various end uses. So I'll pause there, but I think that's hopefully a good summary of hydrogen shots.
That's really helpful. And I think in particular, that last part, Sunita, in terms of the entire value chain, I think is obviously critical as we try to advance the hydrogen economy. I know that there are skeptics out there. I was actually speaking at a power producers conference last week or 2 weeks ago out in the Pacific Northwest and speaking on hydrogen. And I had a gentleman in the audience who was really taking me to task over the fact, in his words, that it would be an absolute impossibility that green hydrogen produced from renewable energy through electrolysis would ever be cost effective. But I think that there is a lot of excitement around this idea of lowering the cost of clean hydrogen and electrolytic hydrogen in particular. There's obviously, it's exciting that DOE is going to be playing a role in this, but obviously private sector has a role to play too. So I was wondering if you could talk a bit about your office's collaboration with the private sector and how you see the public-private partnership, public-private collaboration progressing on hydrogen over the next few years.
Great. Thanks so much, David. And I definitely appreciate that statement in terms of stakeholders sometimes taking you to task or taking us to task in terms of, are these targets really achievable? So I've probably spoken to the same person or same people in the past. I think, but that was really the intent. If you look at the Earth shots, they're meant to be really bold, ambitious targets. To mobilize and catalyze the global community, and very similar to the moonshot, if you think about, over half a century ago. But they are realistic, and so when you look at countries, for instance, have announced, and companies, global CEOs have announced that they think they could get to at least, maybe close to $1.50 with electrolysis. And so it's not, completely conceivable. I think there are many targets out there in terms of $2, even less than $1.50 I have seen. And so it's partly the R&D. So we have a baseline. Again, there's so many different definitions and assumptions when it comes to the cost of hydrogen from electrolysis. For instance, that baseline that we had, the 2020 baseline, even at low volume of capital cost for electrolyzers, we assumed about $1,500 a kilowatt and 5 cents or $50 a megawatt hour or 5 cents a kilowatt hour. We could be at about $5 a kilogram. That was sort of the baseline. But if we get to scale, and so there are, in fact, there was just at the Hydrogen Energy Ministerial, and there was discussion, IEA, others have talked about, hundreds of gigawatts, over 140 gigawatts of electrolysis deployed. And so as we get to the gigawatt scale, we can easily see, again, our studies have shown, half, maybe 40, 50% cost reduction of capital cost. We see a lot of potential with innovation, both on the stack and the balance of plants. And so there definitely are pathways, and that's really the point now, that what we'll be doing in the next several months or year is develop concrete strategies, much more detailed analysis on, what are the different pathways, scenarios for getting that cost down. And so what we did is, in terms of your question of the public-private partnerships, we launched a couple of consortia. So the most recent is called H2New, which stands for Next Generation Electrolysis of Water. And that is bringing in our national lab resources. So we have 17 DOE national labs, over 50 Nobel Prize winners, really unique state-of-the-art facilities and tools, and bringing in, through funding opportunity announcements, the private sector, so companies, universities, institutes, labs that could work together both on, we have another consortium called Hydrogen, capital GEN, and there we have seedling funding opportunity announcements that we can look at innovative concepts and potentially high risk but high impact potential. And then we also, what's new is we have under H2New, we have not just the material, but the actual integration aspects. So looking at components, the actual electrodes, other components. And then we also have a manufacturing and scale up aspect to this consortium. So again, it's not just R&D or early stage R&D, but how do we look at manufacturing with industry and all the various components, as well as, quality control and so forth, and, getting to scale, innovative processes to get to scale, working with the private sector. So that's just one example, but, and maybe one more I'll mention is the collaborations we have on, for instance, HyBlend is one with over 25 partners looking at blending of hydrogen in the natural gas pipeline, HMAT, the Hydrogen Materials Consortium. So between both of those, I think we have over 40 partners. So here too, how do we raise the tide so all the ships go up and provide some unique tools and capabilities so we leverage the resources and avoid duplication? And maybe one more I'll mention, David, is just the international collaboration. So here too, DOE is working with a number of other countries. So we have Mission Innovations, Clean Hydrogen Mission, the Clean Energy Ministerial. We have IEA, of course, and IPHE, which was formed in 2003, which includes over 22 countries. And so there, what we're doing with all these countries is developing a common analytical framework to look at how do we define the emissions for hydrogen, starting with production, but then the entire value chain. So those are just a few examples I thought I'd share in terms of how we're working with other stakeholders and in moving the needle on hydrogen.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Sunita. I know you've got a really busy schedule. We were so excited to have you on, and hopefully we can have you on as a guest again in the future.
Great. Thanks so much, Sandy and David. And thanks again for all of your interest in hydrogen and for disseminating all this information. I think that's also one of the challenges. So the more information and awareness, the better. So thanks again for having me.
So with that, we will close up this episode of Hydrogen Rising. Dr. Satyapal, we want to thank you so much for taking time to sit down with us and update us on the great things going on at DOE and the hydrogen sector, and for giving us your thoughts on the future of hydrogen. Would direct all of our Hydrogen Rising listeners to the hydrogen website at the U.S. Department of Energy. You can find that at hydrogen.energy.gov. And would also encourage folks to check out DOE's H2IQ monthly webinars that they put on. Also, you can find information on that on the website. And of course, you can expect some exciting announcements from the Department of Energy and the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technologies Office, particularly, I think, in the coming week. It's an exciting time in the industry right now. Thanks to all of you, our listeners, for joining us today. If you like what you hear on Hydrogen Rising, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, give us 5 stars in your podcast app. And of course, if you have any questions about the issues that we covered today, please reach out to me or to my co-host, Sandy Safro, and stay tuned for the next episode of Hydrogen Rising in 2 weeks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Hydrogen Rising. Be sure to subscribe to receive timely notifications of future episodes and check out our market-leading publication, The Hydrogen Handbook, on our website at www.klgates.com.